and Revalushrita Reddy.
To the table.
Just a minute, please. Just a minute, please. Just a minute. Just a minute. This is a foreign policy debate, and my point here is on foreign policy. As we understand, on foreign policy, the interventions Modi is making are incredible. We are the first people who responded to the situation in Sri Lanka. Look at how our relationship with Sri Lanka has improved. We are leaders on the global climate crisis, right? We are the first people to respond to Turkey during its humanitarian crisis. And today Erdogan says he will be very proud if India is made a member of the UN Security Council. I mean, are we to not acknowledge these things, Aarti? Subrashta?
Absolutely.
Are we to say all these things are to be taken for granted? Subrashta first or Aarti first? Aarti.
Arnab, thank you. I've been listening to all the commentators very keenly, and it's quite unfortunate that none of these people recognize the magnitude of the event and the things that have unfolded in the last couple of days. First of all, I mean, they all should be proud that India is perhaps the only country which has fulfilled the mission of bringing African Union into the G20. It is such a huge event because Africans, Black lives, people who've been exploited by the two biggest superpowers in the world, they finally find a place in history and in the biggest and the most important and most powerful forum or grouping, that is G20. This was unthinkable. So these people, I don't know which world they live in, but they do not realize the gravity of the justice and the great leadership that Prime Minister Modi has shown in bringing in African Union. That's point number one. Second, India under Prime Minister Modi took a very conscious decision about Ukraine. And despite the enormous pressure that Prime Minister Modi faced from the West, from the NATO countries, India did not budge its line on Ukraine. In fact, India has maintained its strategic independence over the war and in fact maintained a fine balance between the West and Russia. And look, we have finally proven to be right and correct in our assessment, in our understanding, and also in our judgment on the war. Finally, the NATO countries, the West, they recognize the fact that the war has actually harmed a lot of poor people in the world, especially African Black people who were dependent on the exports from Ukraine and Russia for food. Food inflation was a major humanitarian crisis in the world during the war. And India, in the end, was able to persuade the biggest powers in the world to look at this whole issue from that humanitarian perspective. What more would you expect from this?
Nothing more.
Yeah.
Nothing more.
Yes,
I am only saying all of this.
Unthinkable before 2014. Everything was unthinkable before 2014.
This is interesting.
It's fine that we organize a rotational G20. It is fine that we organize a rotational G20 event, but how can you say that Modi ji has been accepted as the global leader? Accepted by whom? By America, by China, by Russia.
India
I would be the happiest person if he is accepted as the global leader. He is the Swayambhu global leader. He is Swayambhu Vishwaguru.
Just 1 minute.
Pankaj. Merely sitting behind the nameplate of Bharat, you don't emerge
India
as
has
the
stood
Vishwaguru.
its ground for the first time, standing up against the West, standing up against the Chinese.
Supporting any declaration does not mean
this is called world leadership. This is called arriving at the global stage.
Aarti, 1 minute. Let's Revalushrita Reddy. Mr. Reddy and Subrashta, just give me a moment. Give me a moment.